It's race number 0. Race number 0 of 36. We're not even at race 1. And we have controversy. I can't believe it. It's race number 0. We already, as I move my chair and almost knock over Sam Horns Jr. here. Yeah, race number 0. We haven't even gotten to the regular races. I can't say points races because points were technically awarded in these duels. But we have not gotten to the normal racing this season, the regular season, the full-length races yet. And we have a controversial call in week 0. This is like week 0 of football where, yes, it counts towards something. There are points awarded, but it's not a regular season race. It's not race 1 of 36 yet. So, anyways, I just can't believe it. So, usually what we do here is we go through each duel. We go, piece by piece. But we got to start at the end here. We're going to inverted pyramid this thing. And we're going to start with the end of duel number 2. Duel number 2, a very tame duel up until about 12 to go, 13 to go. Chris Buescher throws a block. A bunch of people start wrecking. We get a caution, a restart, and then, okay, here we go, blah, blah, blah. Now here we are at the end of the race. Last lap, Erik Jones versus Austin Cindric, side by side. They both had pushes. They're both just a little bit out in front of their pushers. They're trying to side draft, trying to pull each other back, trying to get the Daytona Duel win, get themselves a trophy, a checkered flag, and 10 whole regular season points. It's a photo finish. Oh, they're wrecking in the back. Okay, they're wrecking back there. Christopher Bell hits SVG at a weird angle. Shane Van Gisbergen goes spinning and wrecking. Everyone else goes wrecking, and caution. Well, here's the thing I didn't mention. I threw photo finish out there. That could mean anything. That could mean they came across the line under yellow at 40 miles an hour and it's a photo finish, technically. That could mean it's a photo finish and the caution's thrown after the race. No. We are literally, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong. If it wasn't in the restart zone, it was just outside the restart zone that this happened, which is in the tri-oval. It's in the banked area, heading to the start-finish line where this wreck started, and NASCAR, they hit the button. They hit the caution button. Just mind-boggling. Truly mind-boggling. We are 200 yards, maybe. That could be a wrong number. We're really, really close to the start-finish line of finishing this race and having a photo finish. And yes, at the end of the day, it's not the Daytona 500. It's not the Southern 500, the Brickyard 400. It's not the championship race. So at the end of the day, we're going to come back and look at this Daytona Duel, and it's not going to be the end of the world. Maybe. If it comes down to 1 point between Cindric and Jones and who makes the playoffs, then okay, we can come back and point to this. Get it? But my point being, God, I'm using that word so much here, is that we are so close to the start-finish line. We are so close to the end of this race. No one's flipping into the fence. No one's like 10 feet in the air. Why are you throwing a caution so quickly, NASCAR? Now, if this was like turn number 1 or something, and you see sparks, you see flames, you see a fire, yeah, throw the caution for sure. You need it. Or at least give it a few seconds. See how it plays out. Make sure that everyone's out. Make sure that everyone's okay. And yeah, then you can go for it. But this instance, it's like the instant they started wrecking, NASCAR was like, oh, car route, bam. Like, caution. It's like, whoa, like, what? Let this thing, we're so close to the finish line. I mean, I'm sure from that overhead view, that was probably all in the same shot. I personally, I think they hit the button too quickly here. Maybe they're just practicing for Sunday, seeing what the fan response is, and then on Sunday, if this situation arises just like this, maybe they tie their hands behind their back and say, all right, we're into the tri-oval now. We won't press the button. So maybe it's I'm just mind-blown that we are in race 0 and we've got some controversy already. Somehow, some way, we already got controversy. Officiating calls are tough. I don't feel good for whoever's in that position, whoever has to actually hit that button. That's got to suck, because if you situations like this, you get called out or you get a bunch of people angry at you. But yeah, it ended up changing the results, because at the stripe, Erik Jones won duel number 2, but at the time of caution, which the rule book says at the time of caution, whoever's ahead, they win the race, and Austin Cindric at the time of caution was ahead. So he is starting on the front row of the Daytona 500. He qualified second last night. Tonight, he wins his Daytona Duel, and yeah, that number 2 car, it's fast. Once again, remember, he won the Daytona 500 in 2022. So yeah, I feel like I actually just covered duel number 2 there pretty thoroughly, because, I mean, seriously, duel number 2, usually we have one duel that's just chaos. We see 4 or 5 cautions, like 13 cars finish or something, intense battle for the last position in terms of the open cars. But then the other duel, like, nothing happens. There's maybe one caution for like a single car spin. Maybe the race for the last spot gets intriguing, but other than that, nothing. Like this race, it was pretty intriguing early on in terms of the duel for that final spot. Remember, 2 more spots were handed out for the Daytona 500. In this second duel, we had Corey LaJoie, we had Anthony Alfredo, BJ McLeod, and technically Jimmie Johnson, but Jimmie Johnson was locked in. So it was between McLeod, Alfredo, and Corey LaJoie, who's going to qualify for the Daytona 500. Unfortunately, we didn't really see BJ McLeod in that mix, but so he missed the Daytona 500. But it was, for the most part, down to LaJoie and Anthony Alfredo. There was a technicality. If Jimmie Johnson ended up being the highest finishing car in the duel, then it would have gone to LaJoie on speed. But because Jimmie Johnson early in the race ran out of fuel or had a fuel pressure issue, he had to pit by himself, lost the draft. That ruined his chances at a good day. And so it was truly down to those last 3 cars of McLeod, LaJoie, and Alfredo. As I said, BJ McLeod unfortunately just couldn't get up there and compete with those other 2. But LaJoie was in the top 5 for a good chunk of this race. Anthony Alfredo got up into the top 5 for a bit. So it was like a true duel. They may not have been side by side at every moment, but they were both extremely competitive tonight. And it's kind of, I don't want to say upsetting, but it's like, it kind of sucks that one of these guys had to go home, because they both showed a lot of really good speed tonight and competitive speed that would have made them factors on Sunday with how this kind of racing plays out. But at the end of the day, Anthony Alfredo, he was about, let's call it 9th or 10th. He was on the outside line. He was the 5th or 6th car in that outside line. Corey LaJoie was the 3rd car on the bottom, and Alfredo, with about 5 to go, he had to make a business decision. He couldn't just sit in line for the rest of this race and hope something happened to LaJoie. Hope that his line got going. He had to make a move. He stepped out, tried to form a 3rd line, couldn't prevail, and he ends up falling to the back, having to try to rally at the end there, gets involved in that last 200-yard crash, and that was his chances at the Daytona 500 gone. Corey LaJoie in the Rick Ware Racing car ends up making the Daytona 500. He's put some of his own money into this car, the Stacking Pennies car, the 01 with a little penny behind the 01. He is in the Daytona 500, and he's a really good super speedway racer. And after what we saw tonight with that speed, he could actually be a factor on Sunday. So exciting, huge moment for Corey LaJoie. You know, his career in the last 6 months really has taken a massive swing, and not in the better way, because we saw him at Spire just 2 years ago. At Spire, he was putting together consistent results. He had a career season in 2023. He got to drive the Hendrick Motorsports number 9 car at Gateway when Chase Elliott got suspended, and everything was looking up for LaJoie. And then last year hits. He had a really rough 2024. He basically gets traded mid-season to Rick Ware Racing, and Rick Ware Racing essentially doesn't pick up the option. They don't sign him for 2025. He has to put together this part-time schedule with Rick Ware Racing with some of his own funding. He had to go find his own sponsors. They essentially rebranded, renumbered the car to the .01. And Corey LaJoie, a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and money into this car, but he is in the Daytona 500. Now as for Duel 1. Duel 1, oh my goodness, it was a little bit more frantic. As I said, Duel number 2, we went like lap 0 to 48. No caution, no incidents, no nothing. Duel One, though, they started freaking out really early. So the battle for the spot to make the Daytona 500, this one, Martin Truex Jr. was in on speed, but the other drivers, Chandler Smith, J.J. Yeley, Justin Allgaier, and Helio Castroneves, he was already in, regardless of what he did tonight. Well, on lap 2, lap 3, maybe it was lap 4. Within the first 4 laps, Zane Smith blew a tire and hit the wall. His night was over. That's caution number 1. We've already got a caution for an incident 4 laps into this one. 10 laps later, maybe not even. It was lap 13 or 14. We had a big one. Chandler Smith, one of the guys I just mentioned who was fighting for a Daytona 500 spot in the Garage 66, formerly known as MBM Motorsports car, showing a lot of speed, showing a lot of promise for that team. That was a really big deal. They were up to 3rd in this race. And Chandler Smith throws a bad block or makes a bad move. I'm not sure if he was told clear and he went down to clear and he was just relayed bad information, or if he just truly blindly went to block whoever that was. But yeah, Chandler Smith ends up crashing himself. Really hard crash. He is okay, but Chandler Smith's night over. MBM Garage 66 chances at making the Daytona 500 over, and that also ruined Justin Haley's night as he was out of the race. Helio Castroneves was involved in this wreck as well. He will use that provisional for the Daytona 500. So essentially what this means, if Castroneves were to make the race on speed, if he were to make it on the duels, however he were to make it, there would have been a 40-car field. But now with this new OEP, controversial to some, I might add, it's become a 41-car field. And so Castroneves, regardless, he did not have a good single-car qualifying. He wrecks in the duel. He's still in the race, despite a terrible start to the race weekend. But with Castroneves out, Chandler Smith out, it came down to 2 guys. It came down to Justin Allgaier and J.J. Yeley. And you may be thinking, okay, like Justin Allgaier, they're in a Hendrick-backed car. It's JRM. Dale Jr. owns that car. Easy peasy. Not so fast, my friend. We had all 3 remaining open cars of Truex, Allgaier, and J.J. Yeley with one of the most intense battles for 13th in a dual race you'll ever see. Now, Truex, he spiced things up because let's say Truex was the highest finisher and Yeley finishes second. Well, it's complicated, but Allgaier would get the spot because Truex would take the spot via the duel. And so now the next spot would go to speed, which would be Allgaier. Once again, it's very overly complicated. But with Truex in the mix, it added a little bit of that. But for the most part, it was straight up Yeley or Allgaier. Who's going to make it? And for a bit, it looked like it was going to be J.J. Yeley in the NY racing car. I mean, this would have been a March Madness level upset. Maybe not like a Fairleigh Dickinson beating Purdue, but maybe like a 3-14 upset. Furman beating Virginia, something like that. But it would have been a massive upset for a Hendrick-powered, a Hendrick-backed car owned by Dale Jr. to go down to an NY racing car. And J.J. Yeley, there's a reason I'm saying if. Ladies and gentlemen, Justin Allgaier got up on that 3rd line, made his way up through the field, and he was able to beat J.J. Yeley and Martin Truex Jr. Dale Earnhardt Jr. makes his first ever attempt at the Daytona 500 as a car owner. This is their first race as a Cup Series team. JRM has been a long-time Xfinity team, but the first time they come out to make a Cup Series start, they qualify for the Daytona 500 via the duels with longtime driver, with the defending Xfinity Series champion, Justin Allgaier. It's a fun story. It's a feel-good story. It's a story that NASCAR fans are going to love because Dale Jr. is still one of the most popular names in NASCAR despite him not being a driver. It's a story that NASCAR fans are going to love and enjoy. They're going to love seeing Dale Jr. at the Daytona 500 on Sunday as a car owner. Justin Allgaier, a longtime JRM driver, just won his first Xfinity Series championship after going so long without one. And they're going to be on the grid together on Sunday for the Daytona 500. So that's a very big deal for them. It's a very big deal for NASCAR for that moment. Very emotional for both Allgaier and Dale Jr., Kelly Earnhardt, all that team. It was a very big deal. It's a very big deal to make the Daytona 500. It doesn't matter who you are. Whether you're expecting to win the thing, you're one of the top dogs like a Hendrick, a Gibbs, a Penske, or whether you're scrapping, you're clawing, trying to make your way into the field like LaJoie, like Allgaier, Truex and Jimmy Johnson this year. It doesn't matter who you are. When you have to fight that hard to make the Daytona 500, the biggest race in NASCAR, it's a huge, huge deal when you actually accomplish it, when you actually make the race. So that's why tonight is such a big deal. That's why last night is such a big deal. We don't usually talk about qualifying on this channel much. I might make a post and say, hey, Tyler Reddick won the pole. Post. But we don't go into full detail because nothing is as big of a deal as the Daytona 500. To make this race is a big deal. There's a reason we saw 45 cars enter the race this weekend. And Sunday, we're going to have 41 because of the OEP. Otherwise, it would have been 40. But in that duel, Bubba Wallace was able to pick up the duel win. They were 3 wide behind him entering turn 1, and I was like, oh, this is going to end so ugly. It shockingly didn't. Ty Dillon tried his best to wreck the field by blocking his teammate of all people. That was the most shocking part, through a really not pretty block on Allmendinger. That messed everyone else up enough, and that Bubba Wallace was able to win. So right now, the points leader is Austin Cindric and Bubba Wallace, the top 2 finishers from the 2022 Daytona 500. They are your points leaders. In case you didn't know, both these duels, in terms of points, it's like a stage. The winner gets 10 points. Second place gets 9. Third place gets 8. All the way down to 10th place, who gets 1 single point. So in Duel 1, your point scorers were Bubba Wallace, William Byron, Ty Dillon with 8 whole points. He ends up finishing 3rd. Ross Chastain, Tyler Reddick, AJ Allmendinger, Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott, Justin Allgaier, though Allgaier is declared for Xfinity points, so he's not going to get points, but I guess the owner gets points here. And then that final point went to Kyle Busch. Now, as for duel number 2, those point scorers were obviously Austin Cindric. The winner gets 10 whole points. 9 points go to Erik Jones. 8 points to Chris Buescher, 7 to Denny Hamlin, 6 to Joey Logano, 5 points to LaJoie, 4 points to Todd Gilliland, 3 to Ryan Blaney, 2 points for John Hunter Nemechek, and 1 for Christopher Bell. Another note, Trackhouse Racing they have had a horrible start to Speed Week. So they all qualified 28th or worse, I think. I think Suarez qualified like 28th maybe. SVG was like 30th. Castroneves was 37th and Chastain was 39th, something like that. Well, tonight it got worse for Trackhouse. 3 of the 4 cars wrecked. Suarez and SVG will be going to backups. Castroneves, they're going to repair that car. Chastain, though, as I said, he got some points. They did not damage that car, but rough night for Trackhouse. Great night for Legacy Motor Club. Erik Jones about wins the thing, came very, very close. John Hunter Nemechek scored some points as well. Jimmy Johnson showed some life, showed some speed tonight before the ultimate fuel pressure issue, but our Daytona 500 field is set. Corey LaJoie will be in it. Jimmy Johnson, Martin Truex Jr., Justin Allgaier, and Helio Castroneves. Those are your 5 open cars making the main event. I'm looking forward to Sunday. Really hope it doesn't rain, but tomorrow night, for the first time in 2025, it's NASCAR Truck Night in America.